So Joe Biden won more votes in the 2020 presidential election than any other presidential candidate in history. And while the Democratic coalition grew in number this recent election, it changed somewhat in demographics, losing a percentage of Latinos in Florida and South Texas in particular, while gaining more white, college-educated voters in the suburbs. Here with us now to discuss the evolving Democratic coalition and what it might mean for the party's future is Matt Karp, contributing editor at Jacobin and great friend of the show. Great to see you, Matt.
Happy to be here.
All right, so you warned me that you came prepared with a lot of data. So what have you got for me on the data front?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at turnout and Biden's the shape of the Biden coalition, as opposed to even the Hillary Clinton coalition, which, as we know and we've talked about on this show, and I've written over and over again, it's sort of the same old story. Turnout in working class areas largely flat for the Democrats. If not bending toward Trump in white working class areas, largely flat in working class neighborhoods, Black and Latino working class neighborhoods. That was the story from Obama to Hillary, and it looks like that's the story now. Again, just from my preliminary reconnaissance on this stuff. So looking at just the three big swing states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, right? Some of the stories already visible at the county level, where, in Milwaukee City, white minority county, obviously, Biden's vote bumped up about 3%. If you look at Waukesha County, one of the wealthier collar counties of Milwaukee, he gets a 31% bump in this sort of 90% white, very well-educated, relatively well-educated place. Same thing, Michigan, Detroit City, turnout, actually Biden got less votes in Detroit City than Hillary Clinton did. Part of that is the story is population decline. He improved in Wayne County because he did well in suburban, areas like Livonia and Dearborn, et cetera. And in Oakland County, again, kind of one of the wealthiest of Detroit's suburban counties, he bumped up 27%. Bloomfield Township, places like that, Birmingham, these extremely wealthy sort of six-figure suburbs of Detroit, Biden improving on Hillary's vote by 25-30%, and that's already Hillary having improved significantly on Obama. So it's the same trajectory. And then you come to Georgia. There's been we've had a lot of talk about the heroic efforts on the part of Stacey Abrams and others to sort of boost especially Black turnout in Georgia. And, the numbers, we still need more numbers on this. And there's no question that that's part of the story. Unlike in Milwaukee and in Detroit, looking at the precincts, you can't see this at the county level. So I had to dig into the precincts. Looking at Atlanta, central and southeast Atlanta, there are, Biden did make gains 5, 6, sometimes up to 10% in some precincts in some of these, very Black working class areas of Atlanta. So that's some of the story. Some of that is also about population growth. And you really do see the effort to register voters popping up in the voting rolls there, although the actual vote numbers are sometimes not as dramatic. And but when you look at Fulton County more broadly, you look at, say, Sandy Springs and some of the wealthier, whiter precincts in Sandy Springs, you're seeing 40% shifts to Biden. Massive shifts. And, we need more. This is all still first round and a little bit suggestive rather than definitive. But I think what I've looked at, Nate Cohn was talking about this earlier. I think the story is another, when we drill down, it's going to be another suburban story. Of course, Black voters were fundamental to defeating Donald Trump. There's no getting around that. That's obvious and a baseline. But if you're looking at the turnout differential and the shape of the coalition and how, which constituencies are moving enthusiastically toward Joe Biden, it's clear that it's in places like Waukesha County, Oakland County, Michigan, and Sandy Springs, Georgia. You see that in non-swing districts also. You saw Loudoun County outside D.C. put up 37% more for Biden than for Hillary. You saw exurban counties like Stafford County in Virginia also flip, a very, sturdy red county for John McCain, for Mitt Romney, and for Donald Trump the first time. That one flipped with a 44% boost for Joe Biden. These are educated, affluent, not exclusively, but predominantly comfortable suburban places that it really brought the heat for Joe Biden this time around.
Yeah, wow, that is actually really fascinating. Well, for people who say, well, it was a winning coalition, so who cares? Why does this matter?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've written about this. I mean, I think for some elements of the Democratic leadership, it simply doesn't matter. It's exactly what they want. They want a kind of 51, 52% coalition, increasingly driven by, reliable, enthusiastic, affluent voters who are less, sort of personally invested in significant economic redistribution, but maintain an increasingly sharp partisan worldview and sort of opposition toward Republican irresponsibility, Republican norm breaking, as you've talked about. I think voters in these areas are activated by that stuff. To the worldview of a Nancy Pelosi, I mean, having a coalition that's based in, say, Darien, Connecticut, one of the richest towns in America, which bumped 33% for Biden, as opposed to Hartford, Connecticut, where turnout for Biden fell again, partly because of population decline, but still, you see a coalition that, wants something like a return to the status quo anti-Trump. And I think that works for this leadership. It's a problem for, I guess, us. It's a problem for the left. It's a problem for people who want to build a populist force in the Democratic Party. But it's not really a problem for the party of Pelosi and Schumer.
So my friend Sagar and others on the sort of populist right are very excited about what this could portend for the Republican Party future. What are the barriers within that party, though, to having a truly working class-centric party?
Yeah, I think that narrative is a little bit overstated, too, just from a numbers perspective. For one, if you look at the Latino voters who broke for Trump, I mean, I was just looking at the exit polls, and there are reasons to be cautious about the exit polls this time around. People have raised some questions about them as they did last time. But still, if you break down the Latino vote by income, you can see it is actually strongly breaks down by class, or at least by income, where the working class Latino voters making, say, under $100,000 a year, overwhelmingly supported the Democrats and Joe Biden. And it was really the wealthier Latino voters, according to the exit polls, that broke for Trump. Now, obviously, that explains, I think, Florida to some extent. I don't think that explains what happened in the border counties of Texas. So we still need more answers there. But I think, but I wouldn't be surprised if that is broadly the story with Latino voters nationally. And I think there are limits to, I think what we have is a working class that's divided by between these two parties. You have an element of Latino workers, but predominantly, Trump won 67% of white voters without a college degree, and you have that coalition in the Republican Party, and then you have Black workers and most Latino workers, and an element of sort of a rump element of white workers in the Democratic Party. These parties are divided. I don't think the prospects for a Republican working class party are particularly great, even with this suburban shift, given where the Republicans, the overwhelming majority of the Republicans stand on any economic issue, and the party's attitude towards things like labor and state intervention in regard to healthcare. It's hard to see what Republicans could offer workers on the basis of economics. So you may have a further deepening of a kind of a culturalist workers' party, sort of a culturalist, predominantly white workers' party on the Republican side. But I'm not sure that offers any opening for actual populist policy. I'd be skeptical, if not, cynical about that.
Yeah, well, and that's the most likely trajectory, is that, as we've seen throughout American history, that workers remain divided largely along racial lines, and that essentially elite interests dominate in both of the major parties.
Yeah, exactly. And we should remember, if Sagar were here, I would say to him, and the thing that's activating white workers for Trump, it may be to some extent a kind of implicit or explicit distaste for the Democratic Party and its kind of and its sort of aroma of elitism. But it's not based. It's fundamentally culturalist. It's a kind of culture war on the right, and it's not grounded in any sort of promise of economic redistribution. So I don't know why anyone who really considers themselves an economic populist would be excited about the kind of deepening divisions within the working class. That's basically our nightmare.
Yeah, well, I guess one question is, if you have two major political parties, neither of whom is really particularly serious about redistributive economic policies, although the Democratic Party is better than the Republican Party on those issues, and you essentially have what is a culturalist fight. I think there is, like, in the modern era, this real, what did you say, aroma of elitism from the Democratic Party. There's a lot of like sanctimonious sort of like preening and like holier than thou attitude that frankly used to be more associated with the right, where they're like, you know, super judgy about what you're doing in your private life. Now a lot of that hangs over the Democratic Party. Is that enough to turn off not just the white working class, which has already happened, but is it enough to also turn off the black and brown working class if we're basically looking at a culture war future?
God, I'm just staring into the depths of dystopia. It's difficult. I don't know. I mean, I don't think the numbers really bear that out right now. I mean, you do see. I mean, I think we should treat the sort of triumphalist claims about, you know, Joe Biden, you know, bringing back all these sort of, you know, black working class Obama voters with a lot of skepticism. The numbers are not bearing that out right now from what I'm looking at. But at the same time, you know, we're still talking about, you know, communities that are voting 95% in, you know, in say central Milwaukee or Detroit for the Democrat. So, you know, if you're talking about African American voters, there's really not a lot for Republicans to crow about there. We're looking at basically the status quo in terms of the partisan divide on that front. And yeah, I mean, there may be opportunities for you know, for some kind of Latino voter realignment, but I'm pretty skeptical on that front too. Ultimately, I don't know. Sorry, Crystal, you just depressed me here. This is just bringing me down.
Well, your point about, I hadn't heard anyone make that point about the class divide among Latinos, which I think is a really interesting future aspect to explore, which we will certainly continue to do. Matt, always great to have you. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Crystal.
And we'll have more Rising for you after this.